a woman in corporate, I felt stuck. As a person, I felt stuck. I was like, oh my goodness, is this the rest of my life? Just this constant wheel and chase and routine, and oh my gosh, whatever I studied, I'm stuck in that now. Whatever I'm doing for work, I'm stuck in that. I just had this arrival mentality around adulting, which actually led to me feeling so stuck and feeling like I didn't actually have permission to explore and live as I felt when I was actually younger. Hey beautiful people, this is Hlolo Mavelani. Welcome to my channel. When I stepped into adulting, I think a part of me actually thought, it was a type of arrival. I felt like, okay, I'm going to study, I'm going to do this, I'm going to, go through these certain milestones, and then I arrive. And a part of it, feeling like, adulting or starting to work was an arrival actually made me feel very trapped. So I arrived in corporate, feeling this pressure of it needing to be a destination that actually made me feel so trapped. And that led me to sort of like a downward spiral of feeling very depressed. And the irony of it all was that there were, certain milestones that I had ticked, and in the books, I should have been super feeling fulfilled, right? But because of my perception of adulting being an arrival and starting to work being an arrival, and not recognizing that adulting is actually this layered, multifaceted space of growing, I felt stuck. As a woman in corporate, I felt stuck. As a person, I felt stuck. I was like, oh my goodness, is this the rest of my life? Just this constant wheel and chase and routine, and oh my gosh, whatever I studied, I'm stuck in that now. Whatever I'm doing for work, I'm stuck in that. I just had this arrival mentality around adulting, which actually led to me feeling so stuck and feeling like I didn't actually have permission to explore and live as I felt when I was actually younger. So one of the things that we sort of have to come to terms with this, adulting is not an arrival place. And no one can actually prepare you for how beautiful the freedom is of being an adult, but also how challenging and sometimes so overwhelming being a woman, being an adult can actually be. And I wanted to let you know that you're not alone. If you feel overwhelmed at times of just showing up in the space of being a woman, of having these multi-dreams and ambitions inside of you and 24 hours like everybody else, if you're feeling overwhelmed, you are in good company. And I'm hoping that as we journey together, we're going to be unpacking a lot of what that adulting journey, and as a woman adult, what that journey actually looks like, and how we can feel empowered, and how we can utilize our gifts and utilize our calling and walk in our calling and nurture our families and be good wives and be great sisters and all of that stuff. How do we navigate that as a community and learn from each other? This is the space for that. I remember just reflecting at some point in my early mid-20s and feeling like, there were these milestones I'd been praying for. A husband, a career, to start my business, children. And what surprised me was how they were not enough. They were not enough. And adulting and, just living is not about arrival. It's not about this long checklist of things that you're going to acquire and get this and get that and get this and feel the sense of deep fulfillment necessarily. No, it's a journey that we're going to be living. And in fact, I realized that the human void is so big. Only God can actually fill that gap. my void as a woman, my cry for affirmation, that could actually only be truly fulfilled by a groundedness in God. And so I wanted to talk about just 3 core things I want us to reflect on and think about as we navigate adulting as a nation. Let's be grounded in our faith and our value of self, being connected to our value as the images of God. Let that be the foundation from which we are living from. The world says many things about you as an ambitious woman. Lots of restrictions, lots of judgment. You feel like, could I, should I? I mean, that was probably one of the big things when I was getting into corporate. I thought it was a place of arrival. Like, okay, now this is like, I've arrived at this stage. And when I felt like, oh, it's supposed to be an arrival, I felt trapped. Because, oh my goodness, this is going to be the rest of my life. And then I forgot to listen out for the Father's voice, which was the one giving me permission to still live, to still explore, to not be bound by the walls of corporate, to not be bound even by the walls of business once I stepped out into business. But to be grounded in His voice, in being an image bearer of God as the foundation of my identity. That is so critical. So before you think about how do I function, let's think about faith before function. Be grounded in faith. Make it a daily routine, a fight. I will start my day with prayer, start my day with affirmations around being a daughter of the Most High, being created in His image. Start with those foundations. And then secondly, I wanted to talk about healing while building. When you become an adult, I don't know when one becomes an adult exactly. There's no exact time. But when you become an adult and, the more you learn, the more you reflect, the more you're growing, it's the more you come face to face with your inadequacies, with your need for healing. But I want to encourage you that when you discover how much healing you still need to do, it's not an invitation for you to stop building. No. We actually are going to be building our lives while we are healing. In fact, some things we can only heal from as we build, and some things we can only build as we heal. So I invite you to embrace the process of healing while building. As an adult, as a mom, as a wife, as a corporate exec, as wherever you find yourself, as a student, as a woman, as somebody starting from scratch, starting again, just entering adulting, rethinking how you are going to continue growing, let's start embracing the process of healing as being an asset to our building and not necessarily the reason we should stop building and showing up. So even me being here and chatting to you about all this stuff, it's not that I've arrived, but I've just realized that there's so much healing that I believe that you can also gain from. And I'm still building, I'm still healing. It's happening at the same time. And coming together and actually learning from each other is so powerful. So the next thing I want to just encourage us to think about as we navigate, this adulting space is thinking about purpose versus pressure. And this is layered for, us as women as well, because, there's just this pressure in terms of how society is laying out things, top 10 under 10, top 30 under 30. There's just so much pressure. And timelines that are sometimes placed before us in how we should think and measure our success. And I want to caution us against that. I even want to caution us from the trap that is laid before us when we enter corporate. There's usually timelines, okay, 3 years, you should be in this kind of position. Then the next 4 years, you should be in that kind of position. And that puts a lot of pressure on women as they enter into the adulting space, where their body is actually ready to have children, but at the same time, this feels like also your prime for your career, and then you're juggling these two things. When should I have children, or when should I actually start pursuing marriage and finding my spouse? And these dances, sometimes it's because of like that external pressure of thinking about, timelines that are put out there for us, of what success looks like. And I just want to say, success needs to incorporate the holistic person. Success needs to be purpose rather than accolades. It needs to be thinking about, but God, what did you create me for? I mean, he created us to be his image bearers, of course. But to ask deeper questions about, okay, my season, my time, my contribution to my family, to my friends, to my community. Start where you are and think about purpose rather than the definition of success that is out there. So I'm just, imploring us to say, let's think about purpose versus pressure to achieve in certain milestones, within certain milestones, within certain timelines. I've been thinking about, okay, I think I still want to maybe study. And why can't you just start studying? Why can't you study in like your 50s? Why can't you study? Why can't you rethink how you're going to order the seasons of your life as they unfold, as they unpack, as you prioritize? So I just want to invite you to that place to say, let's not be afraid to put purpose above pressure. That's not to say we're forsaking common sense around making money and surviving, of course. But I'm just talking about that constant feeling of, oh, I haven't arrived. Oh, I'm behind. You are not behind. You are where you find yourself today from your mistakes, from your good deeds, but knowing this, that you are designed for a purpose, for a reason, and you need to run your own race. They want so much more. There's always more. And I'm very optimistic. But sometimes it becomes the self-imposed pressure that takes the joy out of this race. And so I just want to say, let us think about purpose. Purpose has seasons. Purpose has significance versus accolades, So there could be a season where you are tending to a loved one. There could be a season where you're focusing on your little children. There could be a season where you're really, rebuilding relationships. Purpose over the pressure of doing things and all the things that you've thought, you can accomplish in all of your life. It's not about that pressure of wanting to achieve everything now. But let's think about purpose. Lord, what is the season right now? Where should my focus be right now? How should I show up for my family, my job, all these other facets? Where can I get help? How can I ask for help? Let's think about purpose, pacing ourselves for purpose and not being under pressure because, well, that's just how things are. And look, I want to acknowledge there are things that are, institutionalized, like the corporate structure and how often it's not family friendly. This is not great for ambitious women, but it's actually also not healthy and great for ambitious men. So navigating these things with that honesty and that clarity that, look, this thing is not perfect. And so needing to acknowledge the nuances of an imperfect institution, but how do I preserve purpose? How do I ask for help? How do I connect with other people? How do I cry and make room for crying, to just diffuse? How do I make room to show up and still be well despite the brokenness of the system? How do I make sure I make room to pace myself? If maybe, I pace myself for a 5-year trajectory versus a 3-year one. Let's confront those realities and think about the holistic picture of purpose versus the pressure of needing to come to certain milestones at a certain point. All right. I'm going to pause there. And I just wanted to say, if you're feeling tired, if you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're like, there's so much that I want to do, in my home and also outside my home. So much the Lord has placed in my heart. How? When will the time come? So much pressure. I want to let you know that you're not alone, but then also that this is about the journey. And I want you to, to enjoy journeying towards your goals, journeying towards your ambitions. I want you to be well as you journey. I want us to be well as we journey. And so this is the space where we are going to be learning and unpacking more and more around that. All right. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please share and like if this resonated with you. And I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Cheers.